Basically, before we get into neuroimaging, we need to know the neuroanatomy well, and we need to guide the radiology technician to where is the lesion that we are looking for, what is the lesion. Once we get the films, we should look at the films carefully before we look at the report to confirm the findings. We should discuss the film with the radiologist, preferably a neuroradiologist, and if need be, we take a second opinion from another radiologist. Remember, the radiologist is not a clinician, so discuss the DD with the neurologist or neurosurgeon. This is something which I just coined. The contrast enhanced MRI does not lie. It is the observer who makes believe. So use the right sequences so that the interpretation comes out correct. Now, when we approach CT or MRI, we have to first decide which one we have to do. We have to decide which sequence do we need to do. We have to decide if contrast is needed or not needed, rather, because in most cases you need contrast. We have to decide if CT or MRI angiography is needed or not along with it. And then we have also got to decide in our minds where is the lesion and what is the lesion, and then convey this to the radiologist. Also, how fast you need the imaging apart from the specific sequences. So now I'm just going to intersperse a few examples here. Now, when we see a patient with a skewed deviation, we are suspecting a lesion obviously in the brainstem, and so we write it on the request that you are looking for a brainstem lesion, and this is what we see, a dorsal midbrain in a contrast enhanced MRI on sagittal. If you have a clear-cut esotropia with a history of a maxillary sinus carcinoma, then obviously you're looking at the orbital apex, the extraocular muscles, and well, nobody will miss this on imaging. We have a visual fields with the right homonymous hemianopia, and then obviously you will tell the radiologist that you're looking for a lesion in the occipital area, which gives such a congruous homonymous defect. Now, if the imaging comes out normal, what do? You don't give up. You don't say, okay, the radiologist said there is nothing, this is normal, so just give it up. No. You can always ask for repeat imaging with thinner slices. You can ask for a higher magnification at the area of interest, especially if the clinical signs and symptoms are progressive. Definitely in that case. And you can ask for a discount. There's no harm in that. Recognize that the lack of an imaging abnormality does not rule out a pathology. So this is an example here. A girl who had persistent disc edema, and the first image showed nothing. Second image showed nothing. But disc edema persisted and visual field defects kept on increasing, and repeat imaging of the orbit, fat suppressed. Looking at the retrobulbar area, we found this small, in just one slice, cysticercosis. So, okay. Now, indications, well, we all know the indications: unilateral or bilateral visual loss, efferent pupillary defects like anisocoria, Horner's, of afferent pupillary defects with RAPD. This is one of those field effects, again, on exactly congruous, you could say, but it is affecting the middle as right homonymous, and it has a PCA infarct. Other indications we know clinically: proptosis, diplopia, lid abnormalities, oscillopsia, or nystagmus. So this is an example of a patient who had chronic proptosis with ophthalmoplegia and chemosis, and definitely we were suspecting an orbital apex lesion. So the MRI would be the better investigation because it shows soft tissue very well. And you can see the lesion here. And you have another case of orbital apex syndrome with a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so known case of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma with proptosis and maybe loss of vision in the left eye. You have a bilateral trigeminal schwannoma in a 30-year-old with progressive right eye ptosis and esotropia. And you can see that its color is so gray and matching the adjacent soft tissue that you need contrast, and you need to have several images to say what it is. You see this with contrast, coronal image showing very bright lesions. So the other indications are papilledema, then you have orbital trauma or headache or pain. There's one major difference between a CE CT scan and a CE MRI. The CE CT scan may just take 5 minutes to do, whereas a CE MRI will take 5 minutes. So in the emergency situation, you just do a CT scan immediately. Or if you have too many patients lined up for MRI, as it happened recently when we had so many rhino-orbital mucormycosis, that you do the plain CT scan because that is done faster. The radiologists, I must say, are inherently lazy. The reporting is done the next day. I don't know why. I never understood that. So don't wait for that. Call the radiologist on duty, meet him, discuss the findings, start the treatment, and do the referral. An emergent CT scan is required in such situations. You can see a traumatic blowout fracture clinically if you have a limitation of ocular movements. And you can see this case of a trauma with a a superior rectus hematoma, and another case where there was a bullets in the skull with so many of these artifacts on the skull. So all these require just a CT scan, immediate scan, and this is a case of a sudden proptosis in a patient with blood in the lymphangioma. Other situations are when there is acute severe headache, acute papilledema, acute visual loss, acute diplopia. You see post meningioma, there is a hematoma there. A plain CT scan would show this very clearly. Are there any contraindications to contrast? Well, there's one. This is renal failure, or maybe an allergy to contrast. Contrast is definitely not required when a patient you're suspecting only an intracranial or intraorbital hemorrhage. It's a case of trauma. You just need to quickly do a CT scan, decide if there's a fracture or not, to be treated or not. This is two examples of intracranial hematoma, which are clearly seen on a plain CT scan. Traumatic limitation of abduction with zygomatic fracture. So you now decide whether you want to, reset this fracture or you want to wait for 6 weeks. Contrast, which is not required. You have a child with birth hypoxia. You have suspected hydrocephalus in a child. You have sinus disease. You just need a plain CT scan, but not the fungal type, as we saw recently. Then the thyroid eye disease, iodinated contrast may even worsen the thyroid disease. You just need to see thickening of extraocular muscles. All those examples are shown here. A child who has this one-sided hemiplegia, and you can see hemiatrophy. A plain MRI is done here. Then a patient with pseudopapilledema, where you are looking for optic disc drusen calcification. So plain CT scan is enough. You have thyroid-related ophthalmopathy, where you see the thickening of the extraocular muscles, and plain CT scan is enough. Controversial slide. Don't fall in the trap of let's do a CT scan and see, if need be, we will do an MRI after that. If you are suspecting a soft tissue lesion, please do an MRI. Let's do plain MRI, and if need be, we can get a contrast imaging. No. Do a contrast at the first shot. Let's admit the patient for neuroimaging. TPA will cover it. Why? TPA will not cover it. Let's send to that center. It is giving the maximum cut. Well, that is dishonesty. Just follow the radiologist's findings and DD and refer to the neurologist. No. CE-MRI is the examination of choice. We've seen plenty of examples already, and I'm showing you a few other examples. This is multiple metastasis. This is an astrocytoma. You see the contrast, how beautifully it enlarges the astrocytoma. This is a huge pituitary macroadenoma, giant giant pituitary macroadenoma, where you can see there's contrast enhancement. Then this is an optic nerve and chiasm glioma, bilateral, with strong suspicion because child had visual loss and had also these skin lesions. So you can see the extent of the glioma so well. You have bilateral visual loss with multiple cerebral tuberculomas, including chiasmal involvement here, you can see. And then you have a patient with left ophthalmoplegia and a Tolosa-Hunt syndrome. So all these soft tissue lesions are much better seen with MRI with contrast. So it is, there is a small risk of nephrogenic fibrosis. So always do creatinine and urea before ordering contrast MRI. Now, don't do orbital apex cavernous sinus. It definitely requires MRI orbit and brain. However, if patient is scared of the MRI and you are sure what the lesion is going to be, just go and do a CT scan, at least find out if there's a lesion there, and so that you can start some treatment. Patient has slightly elevated urea creatinine, don't avoid it. You can discuss with the nephrologist and use a certain dose of the contrast or a different contrast, which is safer. Have an understanding with the scan center, because I've been doing this all 20 years. There are patients who can't afford. MRIs are costly. So just go for a concession for the 5th patient. Also, they can do academic ultrasound. They can do a CT scan complimentary. You don't need to actually pay for it when they're doing an MRI. When I'll show you some indications. Ask for discounted rate for MRI when they do MRA, MRV, CTA. Ask for discounted rate for contrast MRI, head, face, and orbits, as in case of ROCM recently. So let us see. This is an example of ROCM. You see fungal sinusitis involving the orbital apex. You can see axial coronal images. And ask for a complementary CT scan, a plain CT scan. It doesn't cost them much, and they'll do it free for you. Okay, then. So what are the other indications of such CT with MRI? You have a craniopharyngioma in a 14-year-old with bilateral visual loss. So you can see the cystic nature of the craniopharyngioma, both on the CT and the MRI. You have an optic nerve sheath meningioma and you're looking for calcification on the CT scan, you can see the optic nerve calcification. And medial rectus cysticercosis in the orbit, and you can see in the CT scan calcified area. Tuberculoma of the optic chiasm. Again, you're looking for calcification, whether it is to rule out or to confirm, and then you look at the lesion carefully there in the MRI. And is the whether it's a cochlear implant, pacemaker, or metallic foreign body there, then yes, it becomes a contraindication relatively. Foreign body in the orbit, it should not move, so you will do a CT scan for that. These are the specific imaging sequences which I was talking about: fat suppression, FLAIR, GRE, DWI, PWCT. You also have CISS, and you have so many sequences. Fat suppression should be done as a routine. I don't think we need to tell them that. But for FLAIR, you need to tell them, because basically when you're looking for demyelination, then you should tell them that you need a FLAIR sequence. Fat suppression makes the lesion stand out very well, especially in the orbit. Then AV malformation of the left orbit here, you can see it better. FLAIR sequence shows these demyelinating lesions much better than a plain MRI or a routine T1, T2 weighted. I'm just getting over a few slides. GRE can show blood products. So you can see the image at the bottom, which is showing a lesion there, which would not have been detected if this thing was not done. Diffusion weighted imaging. Nowadays, this is done routinely and it comes along with the MRI, and at least because the neurologists are using it much more than us. It is looking for ischemic stroke in cases for us in homonymous hemianopia, cortical visual impairment, etc. You can see here the difference. The right side is, of course, a CT scan. It detected nothing. The left eye and MRI with the DWI imaging is showing you the area of stroke. Then you have this 30-year-old SLE patient, and the typical lesion is a posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome. And on the DWI imaging, it will be picked up before any other imaging of the MRI, any other slice of the brain. Then there's a diffusion perfusion mismatch, which is used, and this is also used for ischemic penumbra, how much of the area which is ischemic. And then coming to the last, MRI and CT angiography, both are used routinely these days. These are the indications when you have a transient ischemic attack, homonymous hemianopia, strokes, isolated third nerve palsy or CCF. In the isolated third nerve palsy, already covered today in the first lecture. This is a patient who had a pupil involving third nerve palsy, and you can see how there's a suspected a pituitary adenoma. This is another example where third nerve palsy was a huge...
Sorry, Dr. Satya, sorry to interrupt you. Will it be possible to conclude? Because I think Dr. Rohit also have to leave for another session. And
Sure. I didn't hear this thing, warning.
I think you may have to conclude, Dr. Satya, because time is already up and we have
The
one
last
more.
slide.
Yeah.
Just the last slide.
Right.
So
Thank you.
ophthalmologist should communicate to the neuroradiologist the clinical findings, the suspected lesion location, the differential diagnosis, and the urgency of the imaging request to optimize the interpretation of the imaging studies. Thank you.